So I don't do summaries of other people's biographies or other people's books. If you would, maybe the best place to start is just kind of give us a quick overview of your career, and then we'll maybe dive on the Confessions of a Dork Lord, and we'll talk about everything. We'll have a good time.
Great. So my first novel that I published by myself was called Solarian, 2017, June 2017. Kind of a, for adults, but I think a lot of teens probably read it too. Was a somewhat dark epic fantasy, kind of very historic. My background is I'm actually an architect by background, and I had my own firm for many years. So that's what I know about more than anything. And so it was a book that was kind of very much about architectural history and architecture. And it was a book that I spent like 5 years writing that book. Like, just, one of those things where you throw yourself into something and spend like way longer than you should. I'm very happy with it. I love that book. I spent a long time on it. And this is something we touched on a little bit earlier. Confessions of a Dork Lord grew out of that sort of obsession I had with Solari and the amount of time I spent on it. I began to have this desire to do something lighter, and do something a little more fun. Like I used to always call it a palate cleanser. Like when you're having this really long meal and you have something in the middle of it that you're having like all these savory dishes, you'll have like this very tart fruit dish that like kind of cleans your mouth out before you have dessert. And that's kind of like what Dork Lord was. It was like, it was just this thing that completely like kind of washed all of these kind of dark, heavy thoughts out of my head and gave me something that was just kind of filled with kind of joy and humor. Was something that I thought, my 8-9-year-old self would just love and think was really damn funny. And that's why it's kind of why I love this book, because it's really, I wrote it to just really kind of do something happy and fun. And it came out of like spending way too long on, it became 2 books. My adult series is a duology, and the second book is actually coming out in 3 weeks. And I love those books, but it was fun to do something just completely different. And so Confessions was my chance to look at fantasy through basically a completely different lens, like, and to kind of like have some fun with things that sometimes I take very seriously. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that as a writer, I can approach subject matter, something like fantasy, in different ways. I don't have just necessarily my own one take on it. Dork Lord lets me look at fantasy through a totally different lens. And that makes it fresh when I come back to the material. It lets me do something different than my adult work.
Something I noticed is, I don't know if this is any kind of a through line, but it was just a curiosity. As I had heard you talk about how an Egyptian calendar was the inspiration for your adult series. And then the chapters all through Confessions of a Dork Lord are kind of your own for fun calendar. I don't know what that through line is, but it seems like there's something there.
That's awesome you mentioned that, first of all, because I didn't think of that myself. It was not intentional, but that doesn't mean that you're not absolutely right. Because I'm one of those people that I do have an obsession with world building. Like I just absolutely, especially in fantasy, I love working out like all the sort of details of the world while I'm writing. I don't just do it for the sake of world building. I don't think that really serves this. It's always to kind of serve the story or the mood of the scene or something. But yeah, like Solari, I was reading about the Egyptian calendar. They had 360 days, and then there were these sort of 5 days left. I think you're called epigomeral days. They had these sort of 5 days that were left over in their calendar. It was, they had 30-day, they had these 30-day months. So it was this kind of perfect calendar of always having 30 days in your month. And so there's these 5 leftover days that were kind of like this feast or holiday, that were sort of actually considered, they weren't actually like calendar days. It was like literally you had the year of 360 days and then these 5 days in between the 2 years that were this festival. And I just thought that was kind of fascinating, because like everything in our world is obviously we think of it as part of our Outlook calendar. Everything in our world is like a system. Just the fact that you could have these 5 days that were outside of normal time, and outside of the normal schedule, that were just kind of this festival where you didn't work or do anything. And so I took that and started evolving it, and that kind of became the first act of Solari, was this this festival. It was called 5 Days Outside of Time and Place. No one could work, no one could do anything. It's this feast of the sun. And I keep being fascinated because it seems so different from our modern world, of just always being on your phone and time and date, and like to have something that's outside of time and the normal calendar, I thought was amazing. So that was kind of one of the early influences for my adult book. But yeah, that's interesting. You picked up on the goofy names for the days, Terror Day instead of Tuesday or something. I thought it was just a little bit of world building, but they also just sort of made me laugh whenever I looked at them. It sort of sets the tone for each chapter. You remember that you're in this, Dark Lord world.
Did you create like a calendar that you would strictly follow to make sure that throughout the story, because I noticed you repeat days, so I assume that you've got some kind of system worked out that you know exactly how much time has passed
Yeah,
between each
yeah,
chapter?
definitely. And it's one of those things where I always do that. I keep track of the day. But publishers are pretty good at that too. Your copy editor will usually make a list of days just to keep you honest and make sure that you haven't gotten lost in your work. And I think in both Dork Lord books I did mess up the days at some point. I had to go back and like, oh, I'd be like, that was a week ago, and they're counting Tuesday, Thursday. Like, no, you didn't do that right. So I don't know.
So are we talking just a 7-day calendar that you went through and assigned what day for each one?
Yeah, Dork Lord is super straightforward because it's a middle grade novel. I didn't want to be overly complex. So yeah, Dork Lord is a 7-day calendar, and I essentially swapped out the day names for days that kind of sounded similar, so you could kind of get it. And like Saturday is Sadder, Sadder day. Sunday is Sullen Day, Monday Moan Day. So Wednesday Worms Day. So they Fire Day Friday. They're also Dark Lord themed names.